Houston Texans, Houston Rockets, Houston Dynamo, Houston everything, Houston born and raised, H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, folks of all stripes, and distinguished guests, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans. From a diehard Houston sports fan, I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Astros fan podcaster, and feel free to add as many additional qualifiers to that statement to make it true. I'm an actor, improviser, writer, creative multi-hyphenate, but most importantly, I'm a proud Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. You know, most people don't know this unless they listen to the pod, that is, but I'm the Jester they named TC Jester after. And after like a decade or so in writing comedy here in Los Angeles, now I'm podcasting. On today's episode, folks, my notes are all over the place. The Astros split the series with the Angels 2-2. The Rockets remain inconsistent. The Comets return. University of Houston Cougars season ends early. And we check in with the Texans and look forward to the Astros Red Sox here. So let's get to it, folks. At this point of the podcast, I'd like to welcome returning listeners and welcome new listeners to what my brothers call the Paul Broad Pod Ball Blog. Hey, brothers. They're both Milford men. Shout out to my brothers. Shout out to Arrested Development fans. And shout out to the subscribers on the Substack. My subs. Check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience or the full blog experience depending on your interpretation of Mr. Mumbles here. As always, we're recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined by my co-host and co-producer, The Roz, to my Frazier. Carla the dog is here with me. Longtime listeners of the podcast know that she may get on mic from time to time. She's got the hot takes on this podcast. And we do have a new producer that is also allowed on the microphone. I do not silence women. I am a father of a daughter. I am the husband of a wife. My mailman is a male woman. Look, I listen to women. New producer, Baby Katarina, is here, and she's definitely a little fussy right now. So if you hear Baby Cat in the background, I promise she is well taken care of. Mama's taking care of her right now, but, you know, I'm not going to silence her. It's either record a podcast now or wait a couple days. If you're a new parent, you know what I'm talking about. At least if you're a first-time parent. I'm trying to figure this out, folks. But let's get to it. Good day, mates, to all of our Australian listeners and all of my H-Town hustlers. Let's talk sports. I only have a limited amount of time to do this, so let's try to be efficient. I'll try not to make a bunch of crazy non sequiturs and go off on tangents and reference TV shows most of you are probably too young to have ever watched. But I'll do my best here. The Astros split the series with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. They're now 2-2 to start the season. It started off slow. I say that we elected to be sports fans and we should not get too upset by sports. But of course, sports can be frustrating. I started off the season with a little bit of a little negative Nelly, a little negative Nancy, a little Debbie Downer on the blog there on Space Cadet Sports because it looked like it was a tough way to start the season, a very slow offense. The strength of our team, our pitching, just was really slow to start as well. The Angels, we're not projecting them to be the best team in baseball or anything, but my goodness, they showed up strong. Mike Trout was Mike Trout. I don't know. I try to watch all the Astros games. I think this whole thing of Mike Trout taking a step back, Jose Altuve taking a step back, that's just the national media, those haters, kind of rooting for that. Yeah, they're getting a little bit older, but I mean, Mike Trout is still Mike Trout. Jose Altuve is still Jose Altuve. Mike Trout had a great opening series, I should say, for the Angels. He's him, respect where respect is due. But it was tough to see the Astros drop 2 immediately out the gate. However, it was good to see them bounce back and to fight back and to, this is a season where they are not the division leaders like they have been in the past. We're expecting them to have to fight and claw their way up those standings. So it's good to see them just not roll over for this series and come back to split it. There was some tough starting pitching performances. I think Mike Burrows was the only one to get past the fifth inning. Hunter Brown, the opening day starter, had a great game. Couldn't go 5 innings. That was tough. He definitely was more frustrated about it than I was. Diesel, of course, didn't want to get pulled from that game, but he did have a good game. Mike Burrows had a very unlucky game. Really, I'm expecting good things from him. He was able to get into the 6th inning. We needed some guys to eat some innings as starters. The bullpen pitched more innings than the starters in this series, so you'd love to see Burrows go deeper into the game, even if he was giving up some runs. Christian Javier, sadly, he's one out of all the pitching so far. He is the one that I'm a little worried about. He's dropped a little bit of velocity. He was, usually he's a guy that gives up a lot of fly balls. Some of those fly balls just went way too deep. Some of those, they were getting a lot of connections on that invisible of his. There was a lot of ground balls, some ground into double plays that got him out of some jams, and that's not exactly who Christian Javier has been in the past. I love Christian Javier. I love our old rotation of all those guys, the Latin guys that just kind of came out of nowhere with Jose Urquidy, Luis Garcia, Christian Javier, Framber Valdez. They really got us through an amazing era of Astros golden era baseball. Of course, the golden age, I'm trying to say here. My goodness. I'm trying to go a little too fast. I apologize. But, he's one of the last remaining remnants of that rotation. So it's hard to see him take a little bit of a step back there. But unfortunately, I'm a little worried about him. Out of all the things I'm worried about for the Astros right now, which, it's the beginning of the season, I'm not that worried about a lot of things, but I'm hoping Christian Javier can bounce back because it was tough to see, and we're rooting for him here. We're hoping that he can figure out that invisible. Not everybody has to be mid 90s to high 90s pitcher, but it was a tough game for him, and hopefully he can figure out some tweaks to help him stay more effective. The last game was started by Tatsuya Imai. Whew, and that was tough too. He struggled getting his fastball in the zone. He has some great secondary pitches, that's for sure. He looked great. I liked what his pitches looked like, but he just struggled to locate the fastball, which made him struggle to set up those secondary pitches. I hate to say it, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of Lance McCullers Jr. last season, where his secondary stuff still looked pretty good, but he just struggled to establish a fastball, and that just made him a little one-dimensional out there. And it's Major League Baseball. You can't be a one-dimensional pitcher, at least not as a starting pitcher. So that was tough to see Tatsuya struggle to establish that fastball. He was all over the place. The Astros pitchers definitely were giving up some walks. Imai had a tough game. I think it's partially. I don't think we need to worry too much about him. I think he could figure it out. He didn't walk too many batters in the NPB. He definitely didn't walk too many batters and look sharper during spring training. I don't want to say it's nerves. He did say he was nervous, but I don't know if this could all be nerves. But I do think there's a lot of pressure when you come to the Astros. Christian Walker faced it a little bit last season. We'll get to him in a bit. I do think that Imai just was feeling the nerves, was excited about his MLB debut. I think he will get better over time, but his next couple starts might be figuring some things out, getting a little sharper, finessing that fastball, trying to figure some things out there. But I'm not, like I said, the biggest worry for me so far is Christian Javier in that starting rotation. Looking towards the bullpen, I mean, AJ Blueball looks amazing. In our last podcast, I mentioned that he can kind of ramp it up there and get some faster fastballs as a reliever. The man threw a 99-mile-an-hour fastball there. The guy looks good. He looks fantastic so far in this young season, and a lot of people are projecting, well, maybe he can be a back end of the bullpen guy. We'll get to that a little bit too, but I really think that, yeah, that is a possibility. I was listening to an interview, I believe it was with Chandler Rome. I apologize if I'm mistaken there, but he was talking about being a reliever in his collegiate career. He looks, not a reliever, I should say a closer, and looks like he could have some closing type stuff. I mean, potentially. We might need him to at least be a setup guy this season. I'm not saying he's going to take Josh Hader's job. I'm not saying he's going to take Brian Abreu's job, but we are looking for kind of a bridge guy. We are looking for some guys to fill in for us as a setup guy right now. So it could be blue ball. Let's talk about the offense a little bit. It was a slow offensive start. They scored 2 runs in the first 2 games against the Angels, and then they scored 20 runs in the second 2 games against the Angels. Hey, it averages out for 5, and 5 to 6 is what we want to win. At least it's what we need to win in this league. So that that's a little that makes me feel a little bit better. The Astros are walking a lot. Jose Altuve, everybody's talking about it. I'm not the only one. He got 5 walks in this series. It took him almost 100 at-bats, or maybe plate appearances. I apologize. My notes are all over the place. I could blame Katarina, but those of you who listen to the podcast know sometimes my notes are just all over the place, even before I had a baby. Before we had a baby, I apologize. I'm not trying to take my wife's valor there. But folks, I do think that this Astros team, I was talking about after the first game that it I was kind of making some sarcastic comments about the hitting coaches changing, and it seems like more of the same. They are more patient, that's for sure. I can say that it helps having Isaac Paredes in there every day. I know a lot of people are like, maybe we should trade Isaac Paredes, or maybe we should trade Christian Walker. Maybe if we can't trade him, trade Isaac Paredes. We have too many infielders. But I, for one, for me and my household, we stand Isaac Paredes. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk about more Astros. We'll get to some Rockets. We'll talk about some other things after a quick break.
H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. I'm your irreverent host, Paul Salazar Jr. Check us out on social media at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram. Check out the Substack, spacecadetsports.substack.com, where you could be a subscriber. Honestly, 99% of the content that we do here is not behind a paywall. It's just a good way to get updates from us. If you would like to help me pay for some diapers, you can be a premium subscriber. I try to keep those prices low. That's just a way to help pay the bills around here. If you have an idea for some premium perks, I'm all ears. Let me know. We'll build this community together. But let's talk some more Astros offense here. We were talking about Isaac Paredes. We were talking about the patience of the Astros lineup. I also want to shout out Christian Walker. Look, we were all worried, at least. Look, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't too worried about it, but a lot of people, calling Walker Abreu 2.0. A lot of people worried about an aging first baseman being a song that we've heard before here in Houston. Christian Walker looked good. Christian Walker just definitely looks better, a little bit better plate discipline than last season. He definitely is connecting with some balls. He hit some doubles. I think Christian Walker, while he might not be exactly what we were hoping for, with some of those, extra base hits and long balls, he definitely looks like he's improved on last season's performance, at least in the the early couple games here in this season. I'm feeling optimistic about Christian Walker, but let me know what you think. You can hit us in the comments Shout out Houston Comets. But you could also hit us in the comments, is what I'm trying to say. Let us know if you're feeling as optimistic about Christian Walker as I am. We also had some good offense from Joey Loperfido, who looked good out there. He's definitely going to be a guy that we see more when a right-handed pitcher is starting. Bryce Matthews is going to be in the lineup in the outfield when there's a left-handed starter. Jose Altuve even took a game at DH because Isaac Paredes has been all over the field. He started at third, he started at second, he started at DH. He even was in there at one point when Joe Espada lifted Christian Walker for a pinch runner. Isaac Paredes played some first base. And look for that. I think Joe Espada, the manager of the Astros, is going to have to get pretty creative here, not just to find time for Isaac Paredes to play, but we have a lot of interchangeable parts. We have, Bryce Matthews, Joey Loperfido, Jake Myers, and Cam Smith all vying for outfield playing time. And, of course, we're going to have to mix Yordan Alvarez in left field a little bit there, too, to make room for Isaac Paredes in the DH spot, or sometimes Jose Altuve in the DH spots. Overall, they did a lot better with runners in scoring position. They are able to get a lot of runs across. 20 runs in the last two games is definitely encouraging. They're going to need it for the next upcoming series. But another thing that we need to talk about quickly is the bullpen. The bullpen ended up pitching more innings than the starters for the Houston Astros. Definitely AJ Blueball looks like a bright spot. Kaiwei Teng looks like a bright spot. Sadly, Roddery Munoz, not sadly he got a lot of play, but he got a lot of play because the bullpen needed to lean on some kind of arms. He kind of got people upset by challenging a pitch that maybe he shouldn't have challenged. I think the Astros are not too keen on pitchers challenging pitches. I don't think many MLB teams are. Like Chris Sale saying, he's never going to challenge a pitch. Why? Because he thinks they're all strikes. That's just a competitor in a lot of these pitchers. I think it's best practice for pitchers not to challenge. We lost a challenge there, and Roddery Munoz got a little bit of anger from the fans. I get it. I just think they need to remind him that's not your job, buddy. But I do think that he can, while he was a little frustrating to watch at times, I see what the Astros saw in him. There was also some frustration for Brian Abreu pitching in the third game, and then him kind of being needed in the fourth game. And look, I'm not clairvoyant. I wasn't sitting there saying Brian Abreu shouldn't have played in the third game like a lot of y'all were. Good for you if you can, read the future. I get it. The fact of the matter is a lot of these relievers need some consistent playing time. You don't want them sitting on a shelf for too long. They wanted Abreu to get some reps in. He pitched a lot of pitches and came in for the fourth game of the series and struggled. Had lower velocity, was not looking too great in that game, and people are a little worried. I'm not that worried about Brian Abreu. I think it's the beginning of the season. He was a little tired. Maybe that's where the lower velocity came for. He was trying to take a little off the pitches, trying to save himself so he's available for the Boston Red Sox series. And I think it just, I think that's all it was. I don't think it's an injury. And I could be wrong. Obviously, I can't read the future. I hate to admit it. I don't know. I wish I did. If I did, I'd make some better investments maybe. But I do think I understand the frustration of Brian Abreu pitching in the third game. But for me, I'm not going to get that frustrated. They wanted to run him out there and get some playing time. You just don't anticipate every game against the Angels to be close. You're hoping the Astros are a class above the Angels. But shout out to the Angels for making it a good series. But for me, I'm not too worried about Brian Abreu. I think they just need to find him some rest. The season is still young, and he perhaps was just tired and trying to take some off his pitches to be ready for the next couple games. But now he definitely might not be available for the first two games against Boston. So we'll have to see perhaps Brian King, who did a good job of picking up a save just yesterday against the Angels. He'll probably be the closer. We'll probably see some Steven Okert, and maybe even we'll see a setup appearance from AJ Bluebob, the way he's been pitching. We will see. But let's move on from some Astros real quick to talk about the Rockets. Houston Rockets remain inconsistent. Since we've last talked, there was a terrible, historically bad loss to the Timberwolves in overtime. The Rockets climbed their way back to tie the game, had a 13-point lead, at least I believe, I don't have it in my notes here, a 13-point lead in overtime, only to lose by 1 point, 109 to 110 against the Timberwolves. Just honestly, historically bad. After that game, immediately, Coach Ime Udoka was on blast with the media and fans alike. You know, I've definitely been cooling on Ime. I haven't been a fire Ime type guy, but now it's looking pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. It does look like, unless there's some big adjustments that this coach can make, unless he can figure, maybe we bring in an offensive coordinator type thing. You know, we need some offensive game planning for this team. You know, just motivating them with some tough dad talk, and giving the ball to KD is not an offensive game plan. But the Rockets are bouncing back. They did get a win against the Grizzlies, 119 to 109. They dominated the Pelicans. I believe that was yesterday. My days are all a blur now. My sleep schedule's all over the place. Was that yesterday? Yeah, I believe so. They beat them 134 to 102. So the Rockets remain inconsistent. And I'm not going to lie, you know, the young Rockets were league pass must-see, media darlings. And this team with KD has been, they've had some really tough games to watch this season. Last season, I enjoyed watching the Rockets a whole lot more than I've enjoyed watching them this season. And that's kind of baffling to me, because KD is a really fun player to watch. I mean, this team, you know, they've taken a step back defensively. Offensively, they seem to be floundering. They really don't have an identity. You know, Alperen Sengun has been inconsistent. You know, we've seen the ceilings for a lot of these players, and we see what they're capable of. And we've been hoping that this team can figure it out and can gel together, and they've just been inconsistent. And, you know, we can blame Fred VanVleet being out. We could blame KD being on this team, but I think those are kind of smoke screens. I really think at the end of the day, it comes to the head coach, and I think Coach Ime Udoka, you know, I think sometimes the tough love and not taking accountability in the media during the press conferences just isn't a good look. And I've said this before, but I think now more than ever, you know, I'd like to see some changes offensively. I'd like to see something that seems like there's some changes to the offensive game plan, and I'd like to see some accountability. And you know, I get that some of the KD haters out there, they're just saying, you know, any team that KD's on, he kind of ruins and stuff like that. And I mean, you know, I think there is, I've talked about in the past, when a superstar joins a team, there's something to that. I think there's something that changes in the dynamic of the locker rooms and for the coaches, you know, so I get that, but it's hard for me to put all the blame on KD. The guy is playing out of his mind. He is turnover prone, but that's just the way he's played for a while now, so it's not like that's any kind of surprise. You kind of knew what you were getting with KD. And I just think it really comes down to a little bit. I look at the coaching staff more than anything else. But let me know, you know, what you think, because I honestly think that, I guess what the question I'm trying to lead to here is, what will it take for this season? What will it take for you for this season to end and it not end in a blame game? I think honestly, unless the Rockets win a championship, the media is going to kind of go crazy. And the season is going to end on a blame game. And I guess I'm just trying to ask, who do you blame the most right now? Who do you think is going to take the fall for the Rockets if they don't win a championship or don't go to the Western Conference Finals? For me, I think they have to get to the Western Conference Finals for the blame game to not spiral out of control. And right now, I think that's kind of a big ask because they need to figure this team out offensively. They need to kind of tighten up defensively and just be a little more consistent. My expectations for this team, honestly, I'd be happy for a second round playoff push that is competitive. That I want to see this team compete. I don't want to see them completely get blown out at any point. But maybe that's just me. The Comets return, folks. That's right. The WNBA is back in Houston. And as a Comets fan, I am extremely happy. But also, as a former Oilers fan, I don't take this lightly. This is bittersweet because instead of getting a new franchise, the Fertittas have bought the Connecticut Sun, formerly the Mohegan Sun, which, if you don't know their history, you should check it out. They were the first team to be owned by a Native American tribe, which is really cool. But sadly, with the new CBA in the WNBA, the ownership group there and the facilities there just too small for what is going to be the minimum for a WNBA team going forward. The cap is growing exponentially as the game is becoming more profitable and is growing exponentially. So kind of the writing was on the wall for the Connecticut Sun that there was going to be new ownership. And for a lot of locals, they're sad that the team isn't going to remain local. And for those Sun fans, I do feel bad. I don't take it lightly. But as a Houston Comets fan, I am so excited. I'm happy for the WNBA to be back. They have 4 championships, a celebrated team in Houston in our history. And, as the father of a daughter, as the parent of a girl dog, I'm excited about the WNBA being back. We're excited about it in this house. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the Cougars, a little bit about the Texans, and preview the Astros Red Sox series coming right up.
H-Town Rebel Space Cadet Sports.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Folks, sadly, the University of Houston Cougars season ends early for most Cougars fans in a heartbreak. For all Cougars fans, let's be honest. In a heartbreaker, a Sweet 16 loss to Illinois, 65-55 in Toyota Center. Definitely not what we were wanting. It was a heartbreaking ending to the season, to the seniors that we were hoping would finally get to be NCAA tourney champions. It just wasn't in the cards. Kelvin Sampson, head coach of the Cougars, will be back, so that makes me happy. I mean, he should be coach for life until he just doesn't want to coach anymore. What he's done for the program has been incredible. We try to talk all Houston sports here, but I try to only talk about the sports that I keep everyday tabs on. So, I can't speak much to the game as much that it just was heartbreaking to watch, and it was a bummer. But, very proud of the Cougars, very proud of what they've been able to accomplish, and just looking forward to what they can do in the next season. They'll be back. That's how it goes sometimes. You can't win them all. Moving on to the Texans, we were talking last podcast about how we're feeling about the Texans O-line. And for those of you who have not been paying attention to the offseason dealings, the Houston Texans O-line is completely revamped. Former rookie Ariante Ursary is still there. We still have Trent Brown and Blake Fisher, but new additions of Evan Brown. We have Jake Andrews at center, Wyatt Teller and Braden Smith. We have a revamped line. And last season we had a revamped line. It took them a little bit of time to gel, but we also had a new offensive line coach. So maybe this season I'm feeling a lot more optimistic. I don't think that there will be as much time for them to gel. But let me know what you think, folks. Are you as optimistic about the O-line as I am, or do you think it's going to be some more growing pains, like I like to call them? Let me know in the comments. And to wrap up the podcast, let's talk about the games that start tonight. The Astros and Red Sox. Boston is coming into town. Alex Cora will be there. Let's look at the pitching matchups real quick. Tonight is the first start for Lance McCullers Jr. He'll be pitching against former Philly starter Ranger Suarez. What do we expect from McCullers here? We've been talking about it in the offseason this winter. Lance McCullers is hoping to be competitive. He's hoping to bring something to this team. He's definitely talking as if his career is wrapping up, because that's what it feels like. He hasn't been as competitive as he has been. He's hoping he still has some stuff left in the tank. So, what are we expecting here? It really won't take too much to improve on some of his previous performances, like we were talking about with Tatsuya Imai. Here at the podcast, we're looking for Lance McCullers Jr. to locate that fastball, to set up his secondary stuff by locating that fastball, not walking too many batters, and going 5 innings. That's what we want from Lance McCullers in this game. He might give up some runs. It might be a lot of pitches, but we need him to set up his secondary pitches, that slider, with some good fastballs here. There are arms stashed in AAA waiting if this rotation takes too long to launch, and we do expect a 6-man rotation soon. We're rooting for all of them, but the next couple of weeks will determine what direction the rotation is going in for the season going forward. We're rooting for Lance McCullers Jr. Ranger Suarez is a tough lefty. All of the pitchers against the Astros will be tough in this series. The next game tomorrow, the 31st, will be Hunter Brown versus Brian Bayo. And Diesel looked dominant in his first game. I'm thinking this man wants a Cy Young. This should be a quality start, or at least 5 innings this time around. And Brian Bayo is a young arm that I am wary of. The Astros offense will have to be more of the offense of the last 2 games of the Angels series and not like the first. More of that in a bit. The April Fool's game is going to be Mike Burrows versus Garrett Crochet. Burrows looked a little, like I said, unlucky, but just, also some tough getting behind batters at times. Just that's a tough way to pitch. I see what the front office sees in him for sure. I'm glad that he's able to eat some innings out there, but he's looking to kind of bounce back and have a dominant performance in this game, and he's going to have to be ready for a pitcher's duel. He's going to have to be locked in, because Garrett Crochet, look at his baseball savant page. It's nothing but red. The guy is dominant. The guy excels in every metric. It's going to be a tough outing for the Astros on April Fools. So Burrows needs to be ready. The Astros lineup needs to be ready and needs to be locked in. I think, truthfully, I think what this lineup needs is they need to continue taking pitches. They need to work some walks. They need to pass the baton. The offense only had 1 home run in the 4 games against the Angels. Some people say they should have had 2 with that Jordan home big hit hitting the rafters of Minute Maid. Got to put $1 in the Minute Maid or the Daikin Park jar there, but hitting the rafters in Daikin Park, I get it. You can be frustrated, but that's just the way it works there. You can't hit the rafters and call it a home run. That's just how it's been. It's a little frustrating, but them's the breaks. Them's the rules. But I bring it up to say that the Astros aren't relying on home runs like they have in like 2019 or anything like that. But I do think that they're going to have to do this pass the baton offense that they did in the last couple games. They're going to have to take some walks. They're going to have to get some hits and bring some runs in with some hits to the gap. I think that they have it in them, but they're really going to need to focus on that offense and those patient at-bats and kind of follow Isaac Paredes' lead in this series against the Red Sox, or else it is going to be some lopsided scores. Carla is sitting right next to me. She agrees. I do think this offense has what it takes. They do look like they can figure it out. It looks like Joe Espada is willing to arrange the lineup however he sees fit, whether that's the outfield or whether it's shuffling those infielders around to find a new lineup that is effective every day. I know some people are a little frustrated that Joey Loperfido isn't getting more playing time, but he's not going to be playing in games that have a left-handed starting pitcher until he really starts becoming consistent against left-handers. That's just how it's going to be. They have Bryce Matthews on the team, so he's going to take those days with left-handed pitchers. And Jake Myers, he's going to have to get consistent quick, or else he's going to find himself rotating in a platoon situation, or getting into games late as a defender, the way Nick Allen is being used as a pinch runner and defender late in games. Really, when I look at it against this Boston series that starts tonight, I'm optimistic. Maybe I'm being a bit of a homer here, but I think the Astros take 2 games out of the 3. The good guys take the series, but like I said, this offense needs to be ready. Joe Espada will have to pull out all the stops and manage outside of his mind. I loved what I saw from the Astros in the first series, just not rolling over against the Angels and trying to win as many games as possible, because they will need those wins to get to the playoffs. We saw what happened last season. Losing, people keep talking about the Astros not making the playoffs last season, but they always omit the fact that they were only out of the playoffs by 1 game. It's not that the Astros completely fell off last season. They were dealt a bad hand with injuries, that's for sure, but they were 1 game from getting into the playoffs. It's not like the window for the golden era is completely closed. I think this lineup can figure it out. I think Joe Espada can make the right moves. He's going to have to manage this lineup exceptionally, and he's going to have to manage this bullpen exceptionally. Houston native Christian Roa was optioned down to AAA, and I believe Jaden Murray, I don't have that in front of me, but I believe that's what I read earlier this morning. Jaden Murray will be with the team. No, it wasn't Jaden Murray. I apologize. I am looking it up right now, so give me a little bit of time to figure this out. But a new pitcher was added to the 40-man roster. Hayden Wesneski was moved to the IL. Let's see. We're going to have to really do this a long way here. But we do have a new pitcher with the Houston Astros. They don't have the transit. There we go. Cody Bolton. I apologize. Right-handed pitcher Cody Bolton is taking Christian Roa's spot in the bullpen. And Joe Espada is going to have to manage this bullpen exceptionally. We're going to have some good performances with the runners on and some good luck. Baseball also has good luck. People are saying, some of those things were lucky. As during the golden era, the Astros were the luckiest team in baseball. You need good luck to win baseball games. But besides the good luck, they're going to have good management and good performances. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Please like, rate, review, hit all of those buttons for me. We're a small podcast and only go as far as our listenership takes us. We're supported by listeners like you, so please share us with a Houston fan or Australian in your life. Give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And consider being a premium subscriber. Help me buy some Carla treats. Help me buy some diapers. Be a pal. Reach out on social media at Space Cadet Sports, or you can call in. Leave me a voicemail, and maybe it'll make the podcast this season. That's speakpipe.com/Space Cadet Sports, where you can leave a voicemail. Check out the Substack at spacecadetsports.substack.com. Subscribe to support. Tell me what you think some of the perks could be. Check out the merch on paulsalazarjr.net. If you don't want to subscribe, but you want to support the cause, paulsalazarjr.net, because I'm nothing but net, where you can find my other Substack and all my other nonsense. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos, Houston. Abolish ICE.